Right, the next story is good news. Digital ID. Government rolling back their plans on that. I've been quite outspoken about digital ID. I would probably rather go to jail than accept a digital ID card because I have felt for a long time this is just a way to control us. This is a way to give you a carbon score. It's a way to control how we can spend your money. And it's really it could be used in all sorts of things. If we went to war and people said, no, we're not going to fight, well, your parents and your kids aren't getting anything now. We've turned off like it is a power that I don't think we should sleepwalk into. We shouldn't be giving governments that much power that they have everything in one place. We all remember the Canada truckers in COVID. We've seen people debagged anyway, even without digital ID. Whether or not you agree with their politics doesn't really matter. So I was glad to see this. However, I don't really think the dragon has been defeated. I think it's just been injured. What they're basically saying is we're going to take out the mandatory part of this. Going to be mandatory anymore, and my response to that would be it's not going to be mandatory yet. So what you're going to do is try and get people used to using it and then slowly say you can't do that anymore without this, and basically make it mandatory through the back door. Kind of similar to how cash is going, make it more convenient. Tap, tap, tap. When was the last time I realistically carried cash? So then when they say, oh, there's no more cash, we're just going to go cards, you kind of think, oh, well, it's kind of the way we've been doing it. And then you realize actually the benefit of cash. What's been your take on the digital ID story?
I'm with you. I think it's one of the most terrifying existential threats the nation faces. I genuinely do, because it was always, everyone always says, oh, it's mission creep. No, it wasn't. It was the mission. Everything you've just listed is exactly what they want to do. And I think it was Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary, let the cat out of the bag the day before it was announced, when she said, oh yeah, it'll end up being in the NHS. It'll end up being your access to education and that kind of stuff. Despite the fact the next day, Keir Starmer went, oh, it's just for employment. I mean, she said the quiet part out loud the day before it was announced. So, at some point you had to realize that this is what they wanted to do. My big thing, and I think you make a good point here, is actually, if you read A Brave New World, the novel, the point of it is that tyranny will be sold to you as a luxury. In other words, it's going to make your life easier. If everything's in one place, you don't have to root and search for everything and all the rest of that stuff. Your freedom is taken away from you and you're told to be thank you. That is a very kind of dystopian and disturbing thing. I think you're right. This hasn't gone away because this wasn't the first time it's even been an idea. I mean, back in 2004, 5, the Labour Party tried to do it then. I think you're right that the dragon's just been injured, but that idea was still in the government's mind. That's what concerns me more, is that the people who thought this was a good idea are still in control. And until we get that until we get rid of those people, then I'll sleep better at night, because I don't like the idea that people could just follow you wherever you go. They could track you. They could control you. Debanking is actually higher now than it was when Nigel Farage got debanked. I think there's some statistics out the other day that, the number of people that are having bank accounts closed or being turned away because of political issues or the political stances on things, it's very concerning. And I don't really like the idea of the centralization of it, because let's be real, how many leaks, data leak breaches, and civil servants leaving all this stuff on a train? Let's be real, the government can't, it loses its password more times than anybody else, I know. So the idea that it could just look after all this information is just preposterous. It was welcome that it's kind of been mandatory down, but I do think you're right, it is a yet moment, not a kind of we're finished, right, we're not going to do this anymore.
Well, I personally feel that it's more dangerous now. Because I feel what was quite interesting when they announced this was that left and right united. You had Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn both saying no. You had a lot of people left and right. It almost was something that was a universally disliked policy. You have the people that don't really care. You have the people that don't really know who the Prime Minister is. But I feel like most of the politically engaged people, regardless of their stripes, regardless of their party, were like, absolutely not. Strangely not Kemi, whatever. Now that they've done this, I wonder if the fight's going to... Because when this was announced, I was ready. I was like ordering super glue, ready to like super glue myself naked to the gates of Downing Street, ready to just, protest endlessly, ready to, turn up outside Keir Starmer's house at 2 a.m. with a megaphone booing him. Like, I was like, I'm ready to go, and I don't care if I end up in jail.
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be that much in the country for it. I think because everyone just assumed they'd U-turn on it and it would never actually come to pass. I think maybe that stuff would have happened as it approached the House of Lords for final sort of ticks. However, now it's sort of, well, if there wasn't a fight before, there's definitely going to be a massive fight now because it's not mandatory. And I think it goes the way of using your phone rather than cash. So then it sort of is coming in by the back door, which I think is almost more dangerous. However, I do think by the time, I just can't see this Labour government being competent enough to get this done before they're kicked out of office at the next election. What's your kind of take on how dangerous it is?
Yeah, that's interesting because I think you're right, because what they'll do is they'll do like bars and restaurants do, say like, oh, we don't accept it unless you've got this ID for like getting into nightclubs. So I think what they'll do is they'll target younger people. Younger people aren't as scared of a papers, please society because they've never experienced one. And there's a lot of people in the country who are old enough to remember what it was like in the Soviet Union, what it was like in Eastern Europe, where you had to have papers and ID on you all the time. Mine and your generation don't know that. We've never really experienced that in the UK. So we're not as terrified of that concept as older generations are. So I think now it's voluntary. They'll say, but if young people sign up for it, you might get this. And they'll say nightclubs will get on board with it. And they'll say, oh, you can use your digital ID to get in. You'll always have it on your phone. And that's how they'll creep it in. So it's not the generation now, like the majority of people, it's the younger generation, the kind of 16, 17, 18-year-olds that will kind of lap this up because they don't see the fear in it. And then it will become, it won't even need to be mandatory. You'll all need it anyway. It's one of those rather disturbing things because the trial group for this was veterans. They used a group of veterans to access medical services and to kind of move between the military and the civilian world. I thought that was it was quite disturbing. But what it was to prove older people could use the system as well. It was very interesting to see how this was tested because the government might be incompetent. The civil service isn't. And if, once they have an idea and they love structures and they love a database, it's not going away. It's not necessarily just a Labour Party idea because you're right. The idea of Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage agreeing on something, you pay attention. And I think that was a really important part, but it's not gone away. And I think you're right. You're probably perfectly bang on. This is more terrifying now because it's all about suggesting it. And we're very open to suggestion if you look to what happened over COVID.
Well, I mean, I can't even believe more people aren't frightened of this after COVID. Like, we literally saw what they tried to do and what they did do in many instances, especially and around the world as well. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm not relaxed about it. If they thought taking the mandatory part out of it would calm people like me down, I'm absolutely not. But I think the wider thing for me is it just brings me on to how I've always felt that we need some sort of, while I'm against digital ID, I'm not against digital democracy. And I think that, as we've talked about with the psychodrama, the politicians that are acting like children and worrying things like this, I think the general feeling of a lot of people in this country is we don't have enough of a democracy and a say. A vote every 5 years on, do you hate this party more or do you hate that party more? And then the party you hate less saying, well, we've got a mandate to do all this stuff. Some of it, like digital ID, that wasn't even in the manifesto. It's like, no, you don't. And I think that after Brexit, they are scared to put things to the people, but I would like to see a situation where more and more things are put to the people, where you couldn't bring in digital ID without an almost referendum, where you have to agree the energy policy with the people, not just we voted in this government, we'll let them do what they want until the next government changes it. I think that we need more of a say because otherwise we are going to be in this totalitarian, everything's dictated to us, we're told what times we can leave our house and how much carbon we can use. And I don't really want that, especially with kids.
And then the worst bit, say thank you. That's the weird bit at the end. We're supposed to be thankful for it. But I think your really good point here is actually the Brexit vote and the Brexit vote. People were terrified now of their vote being taken away. If you look at what's happening with local elections, 4 million people at the next local elections aren't able to vote. 4 million people because of the system, the bureaucracy. That's just been taken away from them like that. And nobody seems to be outraged and out on the streets. I don't understand why. Our fundamental right to have a say in how our country is run is being taken away from us because people are doing their jobs a little slowly. Not right. And that's the scary bit. Everything that our jury trials, gone. Freedom of speech, gone. We are changing the country in so many fundamental ways, and it's all being done because, we need to save some money, or we need to save some time. Not right. Not right at all.
No. And don't forget Keir Starmer, totalitarian government that, even Apple are annoyed at him because they've had to make their services less safe so that he can go in and have a look at your iCloud images. Anyhow, let's move on to the next story because we could do this one all day.
Subscribe for more content.